Well, good morning and good evening, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Social Responsibility of Algorithms workshop for 2022. My name is Katherine Daniell, and I'm one of the leaders of the Jean Monnet EU project-funded Algorithmic Futures Policy Lab that has supported the development of this third edition of the Social Responsibility of Algorithms workshop. As a place to start this workshop, I would like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you across the airwaves and digital connections from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country that's never been ceded and will always remain sacred. And I pay my respects to elders past and present, and warmly thank the elders who have so generously welcomed us to country at ANU. I would also like to extend my acknowledgement to the custodians of country you're all connecting from. I have two important reasons for doing this evening and to begin our workshop. Firstly, this acknowledgement is an important responsibility in today's Australian context. And in many ways, it is an algorithm of a social nature. It represents a set of responsibilities and actions that I need to acknowledge and respect while on country. Secondly, this acknowledgement allows me to reflect on a point of content. When we think about the social responsibility of algorithms and what this might mean for informed, effective action, we can see that generations of Indigenous people over millennia have taken safe, sustainable, and responsible cybernetic approaches, those approaches that carefully integrate technologies, societies, and environments and their interactive feedbacks, which have at their heart a number of algorithmic qualities. In particular, Indigenous societies have been able to develop responsible governance systems based on shared and intergenerational transferable knowledge that is algorithmic, patterned, and connected to country. Story and songlines are examples of algorithms that support this governance and evolve over time to support individual and collective decision-making and governance. And as we continue our collective digitalisation and modelled representations of the world, Indigenous peoples remain at the forefront of determining what roles these digital algorithmic systems might play in our lives, including volumetric capture and drone technologies, and the kinds of cultural protocols that will ensure that communities can develop responsible governance of cyber country. So as an international community that includes our Indigenous colleagues, we could all do well to see what we can continue to learn from all of these approaches. My next responsibility is to acknowledge the institutions, individuals, and communities who have supported the development of this workshop and who will be involved in and behind our program this week. First of all, thank you to the international set of institutions supporting the Algorithmic Futures Policy Lab and the organisation of this workshop. CNRS Lansade and the Université Paris-Dauphine at PSL, DIMAX at Rutgers University, and a number of groups at the Australian National University, the School of Cybernetics, the Fenner School of Environment and Society, the ANU Centre for European Studies, the ANU Institute for Water Futures, and the ANU School of Engineering. Particular thanks to our chair of the organising committee and Algorithmic Futures podcast lead, Dr. Liz Williams, organising committee members, Professor Alexis Tsoukiás, Professor Fred Roberts, and Dr. Joseph Guillaume, podcast co-lead, Dr. Zena Assad, and Programs Operation and Website co-lead, Kathy Reid. This workshop is run as a part of a Jean Monnet project under the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union, so we gratefully acknowledge their generous financial support. We're also extremely grateful for all the contributions of our workshop partners and organisers, podcast participants, researchers and editors, keynote speakers, paper and video presenters, and all the facilitators, scribes and supporters behind the scenes from all of the participating institutions. And I would now like to hand over to our CNRS colleague, Professor Alexis Tsoukiás, to provide a few words of welcome from Europe and to provide a glimpse into the historical and current context of the Social Responsibility of Algorithms workshop series. Thank you, Alexis.
Hi to everybody. Well, I cannot add very much to what Katherine already said. My first words should be to thank everybody for organizing that. It has been a very complicated issue because originally we were planning to have a real workshop in Paris in December 2021. We all know that the last 2 years have been a little bit complicated. If you remember, we had a pandemic in these last 2 years. And finally, we have gone for this solution, which it is a nice experience to go through. The only words I would like to say is that this is a series of workshops that started in 2017. At that time, the topic of what happens with autonomous artifacts that have an enhanced decision capacity was beginning a topic. And in discussions we had with Fred Roberts from DIMAX, we decided that it could make sense to set up a workshop of invited people where we could talk about these subjects, but with some specific flavor, let's say. The first is that algorithms are not something which is strictly computer science topic. Algorithms exist since centuries. They have been set up in order to organize procedures, and have rules that manage different type of things, even more complicated, but are not necessarily embedded in a computer. Computers are is a very recent object in technology. Algorithms are much, much older ones. So we need to think beyond computer science when we talk about algorithms. And I'm very happy for what Katherine said at the beginning, because it is exactly this idea which introduces also a dimension of interdisciplinarity on what we are trying to introduce with this type of workshop. So I'm very happy to see that this topic is going ahead, that there are people interested, that they share this vision of a more interdisciplinary vision of what the social responsibility of algorithms topic is about. And I hope that in the future we will be able to continue with this type of exchange of ideas and research subjects. Once again, thanks very much to all the organizers of this workshop. I will be very sincere. I didn't believe that it was possible to do something like that. So I'm very happy to see that it's happening. that I failed in my forecast, and it's really possible. Thanks again to all of you, and welcome everybody in attending this workshop.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alexis. And now just a little housekeeping. We'll be running this workshop over 5 days to enable participation from different parts of the globe. All sessions, with the exception of one of the workshops and the breakout room discussions, will likely be recorded should you want to come back to see something later. So please take this into account with your participation. The rough structure of each of the days will be as follows. We'll start with a case study session where we'll ground our exploration of the social responsibility in algorithmic systems with the use of real systems that are being considered or deployed in Australia. On Friday, we'll then have a chance to look across all the case studies and note patterns that signify opportunities for us to contribute our ideas and collective work to the discourse around social responsibility of algorithmic systems around the globe. We'll then have contribution panels where we've got some fantastic speakers, and you'll have a chance to engage and discuss their work and engage with the conversation. And then finally, we'll have keynote talks featuring speakers who are exploring questions around the social responsibility of algorithms from a range of scholarly perspectives from around the world. And we'd invite you to read the bios and abstracts of these keynotes and those of all of the speakers and workshop hosts in the online program.